Good morning, YouTubers. MTK the Talktopus here, and today we're doing something very important and quite special. We are going to transfer the contents of all of my work of 2003 and 4 and the beginning of 5 into the Pacifica Radio archives, the most trusted archive for audio files that I can think of, and particularly, I struggle with that word sometimes, and particularly of content that is, free of the burden of state, party, governmental organs calling it pornographic or dangerous or illegal for its, for the thoughts expressed. Namely, this is my tenure as senior management at KPFK Radio, 90.7 FM, 98.7 FM in Los Angeles. And what we have here is the documentation of the news department and some of the public affairs departments, the entire reaction at its most potent to the Iraq War. Every single story from every single day. I invented a midday newscast. It was a half-hour midday newscast. We lengthened the evening news, made it a 1-hour evening news. The amount of production was immense, far more than that station has ever done before or ever done since. And this was granted to me by the general manager at the time and the board at the time, who hired me to make this happen at a time when the station was going from analog to digital, if you can believe it, that late. And also, I interviewed telling them, nobody I know listens to Pacifica anymore. These guys are trying to pitch a war right now. It's a big deal. This is crazy. Pacifica needs to be a certain blah, blah. Many of us were critical. And when they gave me the job, I was thrilled, scared, very wary, and roughly, in 2003, I would have been 36 years old in Los Angeles with a newborn son who was maybe 5 months old. And Bush, Blair, and Aznar pushing for war. This is that content. You can see February to March, April to May, June to July, August to September, October to December. That's all of 2003. 2004, January to March, and then there's 2004 kind of interspersed here. There were so many people involved in this project, and as the director, I hired many of them, I fired several of them, and I took a lot of heat for being narcissistic, egotistical, very quick and sharp with both my tongue and my decision making, and many decisions I made poorly. And for those, please accept my apologies. But many I made, I think, very well and totally differently from any news ever produced in the United States of America. I'm laughing because I can't believe I'm so proud of this material. I'm so proud of the people accepting my leadership and taking it to the levels that they did. And everyone in that newsroom made this happen, not me. I set the ground rules and provided the spine to let freedom of expression happen in the face of an onslaught of a pitch for war. And I do believe we were a small part of what I call and have called World Peace I. In the same manner that you have a World War I and a World War II, many years before 2003, when I was working with Rigo, the artist, internationally known artist, I told him, we need a World Peace I. This might have been in the late 90s. And he's like, oh, that's a great idea. And he used to tell his students, I have this friend, Karthik, he came up with this idea, we need a World Peace I. And it was a kind of simple gag between us that we enjoyed. And then here came this opportunity. And 15 million people all over the world in the largest expression, voluntary expression, transnational, international expression against a war before it started, happened. On February 15th of 2003, millions, tens of millions of people. And the press attempted to erase it, the mainstream press erased it, countries all over the world tried to avoid talking about it, and it was the first time in history that we did that. Now, we had little effect on Bush and Blair and Aznar marching on to war and leaving us with this quagmire from hell, this mistake, this terrible mistake that millions of us told you, do not do this, and the criminal enterprises in Afghanistan and Iraq that continue to this day. We spoke as one. World Peace One, February 15th, 2003. And this content is dedicated to World Peace One. I'm MT Karthik. There are so many people to thank in our newsroom: Maggie LaPeak, Monica Lopez, Patrick Burke, Jason Rosenkrantz, Aura Bagato, Walter Tanner were only a handful of the people who were so critical to us at that time. Paige Getz. I'm stopping because I can't sit here and list everyone. Their names, actually their initials, are on each of these CDs because I was so dictatorial. I wanted more news. I said, we're not going to say our names. And this is Los Angeles. A lot of people are using, non-commercial radio as a means to audition for gigs here in town, And I said, yeah, if we're just going to use our initials because then we can have more time for content. And so MLL, MTK, Monica Lopez, MT Karthik, PCB, Patrick Burke, JFR, Jason Rosenkrantz. It was AAB, Aura Bagato. It was incredible. They agreed to this, hammered away, and we produced, I believe, the best content in advance of and during the Iraq War of 2003. Now, the content I saved and I cut up and I put up on the net using a drawing that I made simply several years ago. This was on the net for some time. Here you can see that drawing. It's basically a timeline, and on the timeline were statements, and then the way I had it was you could click and you would hear the audio of that statement. And this is long like this, but then when we scanned it and put it into the internet, you would scroll down and you would hear the sound. It all begins here with Colin Powell lying to the United Nations. And there's World Peace One. An amazing day in history. Many, many stories here. This was just the beginning of that sort of material. But all of these, all the sound here, Bush, Blair, and Aznar meeting in Azores, Hans Blick's last press conference at the UN. I was there for that. And I was in the press corps at the United Nations Security Council during the final run-up to war in the bombing of Baghdad, the shock and awe campaign. We had reporters on the ground both in the Middle East, in Los Angeles, in New York, in Washington. And our stern effort to plead for peace is exceptionally well represented here. In addition to coverage of the 2004 election, the only election that has ever been contested by a senator of the United States in the history of our country, our Senator Barbara Boxer, who listened to us when we begged her and said Ohio there's something illegal happening in Ohio. All of that content is here as well. It took a lot of courage, and a lot of people stepped up. I'm MTK the Talktopus. I was MTK on the MIC, the producer, director of this material, and I'm very proud of everybody who participated. And I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I hope one day this work will be appreciated and understood in the way I believe it deserves to be.